In this video, we're going to look at the application of mind maps. So we're going to explore different ways that you can use mind maps in your classroom. So ultimately, mind maps are for teaching and developing skills for your learners. And a great way to introduce them to mind maps is to you yourself use mind maps in your teaching. And this will help to establish the skill for learners and help them to become familiar with mind maps themselves. Mind maps are a great tool to use as an introductory activity. When you are beginning a new theme or a piece of content, you can use a mind map to help your learners introduce the topic. Such as if you are doing South African history, you might say, let's describe Nelson Mandela. Here is the starfish mind map. And already your learners are becoming familiar with the mind map. You get to see what they know. Do they know who Nelson Mandela is? Can they describe him? It also, it gives you a starting point as to how far back you need to fill your learners in. So we've looked at teaching with mind maps, and just remember to try and use mind maps in your teaching and in the classroom as much as possible so learners become familiar and used to working with them. The next step up is to get your learners to start learning with mind maps. And this will start to reinforce the different skills. Activities that you ask your learners to do, such as taking notes or classroom activities where they're in pairs, get your learners to use mind maps. And that way, they'll start to develop the thinking skills that you're going to want from them in your tests and assignments. For example, compare Nelson Mandela to Mahatma Gandhi. Not only are you looking at content and information that you need to cover, but you're developing the skill to compare and analyze two things to find similarities and differences at the same time. Because as important as content is in the classroom, skills are more important. What are the learners going to do with the facts? So we've looked at introductory activities, some teaching activities, and again, under the teaching activities, there's whole class, group, and paired. What you need to remember is there's a different level of assistance needed for all of those activities. A whole class is when learners are still starting out with mind maps and unfamiliar. That way you can work together as a class and they can all discuss questions that you have. Group, again, a little bit more smaller, not as much support by the teacher. Learners can ask their fellow learners sitting next to them for help. Paired, again, more independence required by the learner to complete the mind map. And you can even go as far as doing it individually. And this will also show that if a learner can complete a mind map individually, they understand the thinking skill behind it, the thinking pattern, the higher order thinking that you want. So the last step is assessing with mind maps. And this is where learners completing mind maps individually would come in. It's a great way to show you informal assessment. If a learner can complete a mind map and you have a quick look at it, you can gauge whether they've understood the content or not. Can they apply the facts? Can they compare the information you give them? Can they justify? Can they order the information that you've given them? So not only is mind maps a great way to get your learners to engage with the content, but it is a quick way for you to gauge whether they are understanding what you are teaching them. And lastly, you want all these steps to eventually build up to your formal assessment. And if you can use mind maps in your teaching, in the learning phase in the classroom, and through informal assessment, you will really be doing your learners a huge justice when it comes to exams, tests, and assignments. Just to summarize, mind maps in your teaching, always as an introductory activity, as a teaching activity, and a learning activity for learners. Very, very important. Also a great way to take notes can be through mind maps. And lastly, through assessment. And don't forget the power of informal assessment.